Hello everyone, Sulli-Ween Bird here, or you can call me Sully. Well, it's time for the Sulli-Ween tradition of reviewing a Tim Burton movie, and what I got for today is one of his latest. And no, it's not Dumbo. I already made a review of that months ago, though someday I hope there'll be a full review of it. I'm talking about a movie that came out in 2016. A year so specific that even the movie addresses it a couple of times, but more on that later. So, without further ado, it's time to take a look at the bizarre, yet okay flick that is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. The movie is based on the novel of the same name by Ransom Riggs and published by Quirk Books. And while I never read it, I found the photographs in the book to be haunting and interesting, and I don't care if some were altered to fit the style of the book or know exactly what happened in the actual photos because they look neat. A teenage boy named Jake has a close relationship with his grandfather Abe, who tells him stories of his adventures on an island near Wales, where he stayed at a children's home run by Miss Alma Peregrine, and where the children have particularities or unique abilities. And Jake, as well as his grandfather, believe them to be real. But no one believes Jake when he tells his friends about his grandfather's stories, not even Jake's parents. But Abe dies with his eyes removed, and when getting advice from a psychiatrist, Jake suggests going to the children's home where Abe went. And accompanied by his father, Jake arrives at Carnholm, Wales, the place where the home is, but found it destroyed until a group of kids bring him to Miss Peregrine, in what's called the Loop, an area made within a specific time and date where it's the same day 24/7, except you can freely do whatever you want, and Peregrine is known as an Umbran, who can turn into a bird, or in this case, a peregrine falcon, and keeps track of the time and makes sure everything's perfectly timed. And the kids are known as Peculiars, who have special abilities that were passed down as a gene. But Jake only came to see Peregrine as his grandfather said she'll explain everything, and she does, including some bad Peculiars called Hallowghasts, or Hollows, who can enter and threaten loops, and are invisible to everyone. And Jake soon discovers how important he is in helping Peregrine's home of Peculiars. Now, I state that this movie is bizarre, yet okay, but it's only bizarre in the visuals and effects, yet only okay in the story and characters. And really, summing up the story is the hardest thing to explain for this movie, because there's way too much to go over, even in detail. The loop Peregrine's in is set on September 3rd, 1943, the day when the Germans dropped a bomb on the house, as it all takes place during World War II. And some of it makes sense, as Abe left the home to fight in the war, and many people thought the war caused him to think he lived at that home and have dementia when seeing hollows, when it actually turns out to be true and Abe seeing the hollows is his peculiarity. But the reasons for the loops existing in hidden places and how they function does go a little overboard. And it's hard to explain without going into detail, which I don't think I could. Sure, Jake time traveled to the 40s and back, and the scenarios within the loop are like Groundhog Day, but Peregrine has to manually reset the day, and kill a hollow, and even know everything about her children and Jake, all on perfect timing. It just seems odd for her to do all these things and only leave the loop as a bird. I mean, does she even get tired of doing them after all these years? And then there's a loop existing in 2016, the same year the movie came out, which kind of sucks out the fantasy element when placed in modern day, but it also makes it dated when mentioning the exact year, let alone originally taking place years ago. And that bothers me when fantasies are set in present day, as opposed to having them set in a different time period or not telling what year it is will make the movie feel more magical that way. And it works here for only about 2/3 of the film. But there's also a villain in the film, who kind of steals the show for me here. Named Mr. Baron, he does look scary with those white eyes, and the actor does play it as over the top as he can, making him enjoyable to watch. However, his plot is sort of hard to get into. Not that it's hard to understand, I just can't get behind it all. He wanted to harness the Umbran's powers, with his fellow Peculiars, but doing so caused them, except Baron, to turn into hollows, and Baron finds a way to stay looking human by eating the eyes of peculiar children, but their eyes remain white due to Baron's experiment with the Umbrans. And all of that is fine and understandable, but where does Baron go after that? Yes, he's trying to become immortal and can change into other humans, but if there's no more peculiar children's eyes to eat, does he keep on living or will soon fade away? I don't know about this, because the movie keeps on putting more backstories and information about these characters and situations that I start to feel lost. So, even though I like Baron for how silly he is, the rest of the characters don't have that distinction. They're alright, but they're not very engaging. But the one thing that I enjoy about them, mostly with the children, are their peculiarities, and each one is quite unique. One can float away, one is invisible, one has bees inside his body, one is very strong, one can grow plants big and fast, one can create fire, and one can project his dreams as movies. These are all quite fun and neat. The effects for what they are look well done. And yes, most of them are green screen and CGI, but only one scene is done in stop motion, in which one of the kids has his dolls come to life by putting hearts in them. And this is the only time it happens. It looks pretty cool and seamless, and I haven't seen it done this well since Monkey Bone of combining stop motion with live action. It is bizarre to witness it done this recently, and I wish there was more like this in future movies. And is it me, or is one of the fairgoers near the end of the movie the director himself making a very brief cameo? Though one other aspect I must bring up is the music, which does sound haunting and beautiful, but is composed by Mike Haim and Matthew Marchson. This is one of the very few times Burton had the music done by someone other than Danny Elfman, with the others being Howard Shore for Ed Wood, and David Newman and Michael Conoverto for the Frankenweenie short film. It is quite odd to not only break the usual collaborative tradition, but to use two composers for one film, as Elfman was working on The Girl on the Train and Alice Through the Looking Glass at the time. Speaking of a collaborative tradition, this is a rare occurrence for Burton's tradition of having his usual cast and crew get a step up. In this case, it's his current wife, Eva Green, getting the main role. It's weird because Burton usually has his wives as a supporting role or a bit role, first with Lisa Marie getting bit roles, then Helen Bonham Carter getting supporting or occasionally lead role, and now Eva Green getting the same treatment as Carter. And I'm not saying that I dislike it, or even like it, I just found it to be an interesting fact. And the actors playing their characters did an alright job. Eva Green plays Miss Peregrine, Asha Butterfield plays Jake, Samuel L. Jackson plays Baron, Judi Dench plays Miss Avocet, Rupert Everett plays Orphanologist, Allison Janney plays Dr. Golan, Chris O'Dowd plays Frank, Terrence Stamp plays Abe, Ella Purnell plays Emma, Finlay Macmillan plays Enoch, Lauren McCrosty plays Olive, Hayden Kaler Stone plays Horace, Georgia Pemberton plays Fiona, Milo Parker plays Hugh, Raffaella Chapman plays Claire, Pixie Davies plays Bronwyn, Cameron King plays Millard, Lewis Davidson plays Victor, Kim Dickens plays Jake's mom, and Olen Jones plays Shelley. As a whole, this movie is alright. The characters, for the most part, are okay, the story is fine, and the effects are rather good. Director Tim Burton did a fair enough job at showing children with special abilities and the adventures and perils they go through. But the story is somewhat complex, with ideas of time loops, reality versus fantasy, and a villain's plot that's kind of hard to get behind. And while the characters aren't too interesting, their particularities are their strong point, plus the effects and some bizarre scenes do make the whole film okay at best. And while the fantasy elements are like a mixture of Edward Scissorhands and Big Fish, I surprisingly don't mind it. But it's not one of my favorite Burton films, and it's not quite one of his best. Yet it's more middle of the road for me. So today, this movie we get a rating of 2.5 mixed stars. So thank you for joining me. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Facebook or Twitter, support me on Patreon, and tune in next time for more of Sulli-Ween.